Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with drdan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's podcast. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoachddanamzallag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our 8th episode of Season 11, a special guest and co-author of Grad to Grown Up, Courtney Bejgrowicz. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Courtney, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Dr. Dan. I don't know if I can do my introduction in one breath like you have yours down, but I'll try. So thanks so much for having me.
Sure.
I am actually a high school English teacher, and I am an educational consultant. I specialize in programs for graduates who are going either from high school to college or college to the workforce, and creating programs that help them find their career paths and become more independent. And why I'm here today is I co-authored a book with my father, Gene Rice. He is the executive, the CEO of an executive recruiting firm. It's called Rice Cohen International. And we wrote a book together called Grad to Grown Up, 68 Tips to Excel in Your Personal and Professional Life. So we are using this book as a way to help people. All of the proceeds go to a charity, a nonprofit that my mother and father started. It's called the Plant a Seed, Inspire a Dream Foundation, that helps teenagers find their passions and then participate in those activities. And then the book, we hope, is a message that can help not only young adults, but anyone looking to live a more fulfilled life and grow their careers.
Beautiful. So this is what when we see in high school, like student counselors, is it primarily what they teach them about how to get ready for college, or those applications and all that, or how does that work? Is it something similar?
So it's interesting. I have worked in public school, and I am now at a Quaker college preparatory school where there's a lot more resources, and they have a whole college counseling department. But what's interesting is the focus there, and not even so much in public school, but the focus overall would be just get into college or figure out a trade school. And that's not really what this book is about. This book is about figuring out what your passion is, and then figuring out how you can meet the right people, foster mentorship, and then grow that career. And the control that you actually do have. A lot of people think you need to have connections and you need to have all these different skills lined up to be able to make it and be successful. And really, you have a lot more control than that. So it's teaching those skills. But what's interesting is our publisher really wanted us to write a book just about business.
Okay.
That's my dad's specialty. He built one of the top executive recruiting search firms in the world, and he specializes in the performance improvement industry. And that's really where the expertise lies. And there's such great information here about how to interview, how to negotiate offers. But he felt, and I felt very strongly about this as well, that you can't have professional success without personal success. And so we said, we are not writing just a business book. That's not where our heart lies. So there's 5 sections to the book. The first part is life. And so there's 14 short, digestible chapters just about general life advice. For example, seek out the oldest person in the room, how to do that, questions to ask, stories about that. Part 2 is your job search. So that would be primarily focused on young adults, but how to take control of the job search, the role of the resume, increasing your number of interviews. There's a 5-step interview process which is amazing. And then part 3 is your career. So how to advance in your career, how to grow, what's next, when to know if you need to pivot in your career. Part 4 is personal finance. So as you start accumulating your own wealth, what do you do? How do you invest it? What's a 401k? What is the stock market? What to avoid? And then part 5 is health and relationships. So that's where we get very vulnerable and personal and talk about, leaving the stuff you do, Dr. Dan, leaving your baggage behind and marrying the right person and taking control of your healthcare, things like that.
So this is basically like a way to live your life for dummies kind of thing.
Yeah. You could say that. It's funny because everyone who's reading the book comes back to us and says, this is not just for graduates. Like I'm 65 and I'm learning from this, or, this is something everyone needs. And that's really true. When you work with a publisher, they of course try to market you and package it. And this is a great book for graduates, but it's really a great book for anyone who just wants more out of life.
So what kind of challenges have you seen, Courtney, when it comes to writing this book? Now, I know your dad is very successful in his business and all that, so he has a very good business acumen and knowing exactly the step-by-step to be able to advance in your career because he teaches that. But when it comes to going back into a certain past, because he has to go back into a college grad mind to be able to kind of like get this process. When he graduated, life was different than what it is now. So did you write that section of the book because you are living it, or you lived it for a while before you got into your career?
So that's a great question. And I think that's why naturally the book became what it was. So first, my father runs an internship program, and they bring in 4 interns every summer from, top universities. They're the best and the brightest. And what he does once a week is what he would call Gene's life lessons. And it's nothing to do with the business, but just like, what do you need to know? Like, what are things he wished he knew at that age, just to kind of go through to the next steps. And so, he would do things like, okay, let's talk about a budget. How many of you want to live on your own? Raise your hand if you want to live by yourself after college. Okay, do you know how much that's going to cost? Let's talk about, your cable bill. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. And then at the end of it, their mouths would droop open, and he would say, if you get anything from this, just go home and hug your parents tonight, because they've been paying for that. Yes. But there was so much that these smart, brilliant young adults didn't know about how to then make it once they're on their own. And so everyone always told him, you need to put this in a book. Like, this is great stuff. And so that was his goal. And he is not a writer. He's a communicator. He needed me. I am a writer. I have a degree in economics and also a degree in English. And so I love to write. That's one of my hobbies and my passions. So he said, I need you to come in. You're going to be the ghostwriter. I'm going to verbalize my ideas. You're going to make them pretty and package it. And so we sat down. We actually took a class together about how to get published. Like, we don't know anything about this. Let's learn about it. And it's so funny because my dad, when you talk about differences between when he grew up and now, he was 2 credits away from getting a college degree and left to open. He started in the bar business. He would run rock and roll clubs with all original live music in Long Island. That is ages and ages ago. But he had 2 credits left and was like, I can make money doing this. And he never even got his college degree. So I always thought to myself, I'm more like my mom. She was a speech therapist, very well educated. And I went to this class with my dad and I was like, wait, this is why he's successful. He had his notebook every day. I was like, I want you in my class. This is great. So we took this class together. We got our literary agent. We got a publisher, which was so amazing that we were able to do that. And then as we started writing it and fleshing it out, we realized that there was 2 voices to the story that needed to be in every chapter. And so with these 68 short chapters, it starts with my dad's voice, and then all of the chapters end with what's called a Courtney comment. And so I put my spin on the advice as someone who's younger, who is still trying to figure out, how to become quote unquote an adult.
Yes.
I can connect to the reader in that way. And, half of the time I'm making fun of my dad, half of the time, I'm bringing in a different spin, such as technology, or what it's like from a liberal arts aspect versus business. And so the father-daughter, as well as the older, younger voice, really is what made this book, I think, so special and relatable.
Beautiful. And I'm sure that a lot of the grads, because when I provide therapy to students who are going through mental illness, either depression or whatever it is, because now after you finish high school, you start to think to yourself, what am I going to do with my life? No one knows what major they want to select. No one knows if college is the best option. Should they go to a trade school, vocational services, whatever it is? So when they leave high school and they have to go through the applications for colleges, and they just don't know how to write the essay for the colleges. So do you provide tips on that, Courtney, or is it just after this whole process has been completed?
That's really interesting that you say that, because I think our next book, especially because of my expertise working as a high school teacher, will be more high school graduate focused. This book is really college graduation focused, or someone who's starting their career at 18.
Okay.
So we don't focus as much on, that's more what I do in my other business, where I'm, consulting about programs to get your high school graduates then to the next step. But this book is a few years beyond that.
So this is good. This will be a good prequel, because that seems like the book that you wrote Grown Up is the second. It should be the sequel to what the book we just talked about. So
exactly.
It's interesting, because a lot of people, at least you'll be able to cover the market of the young crowd, or the younger crowd, that is. Because again, when it comes to people graduating college and now they said, okay, I did law, let's say they went into a law degree, and sometimes they realize that's not my passion. Okay, so what to do after? I mean, they are already $200,000 in debt, with school debt.
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to be able to pay back that debt? Are there some tips to be able to kind of like try to extract some kind of passion of what they've studied for 3-4 years to be able to get a degree, and what to do with that?
You sound exactly like my dad, because he uses the young lawyers and the law degrees as an example all the time, because we have 2 people in our family who went to law school, exactly what you said, graduated and hated law and pivoted and have totally different careers now. I, on the other hand, I thought maybe I would want to go into law. And a lot of what I talk about as well is all of those external factors that decide our direction versus developing our inner compass of what really brings us joy and gives us purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought I went to Lehigh University, which is a competitive university. Everyone's going to, work on Wall Street or go to med school, go to law school. I wanted to prove I could do that as well. But my dad sat me down. And so this is even a few steps before that, which is why there are things in this book that are great for a high school graduate. He made me do internships. And so he called someone that he knew, and he said, my daughter needs to be exposed to law. She will work for free all summer. But if you reach out to people and you say, I have an interest in what you do and I will work for free,
they love
most people, most people are saying yes.
Yes.
So I spent a summer being exposed to everything from the courtroom to arbitration to the paperwork. I think what was most useful to me was the lunch talk and the water cooler talk, and seeing what people complain about. And what I knew after that summer was law is not for me. So I didn't have to be $200,000 in debt to figure that out. So I think, in the first place, you really need to do what you think you're committing your life to and make sure it's for you before you even go down that track. But let's say you do, and you have a law degree and you're unhappy. first, I think you have to figure out what it is that you do love. And if it's something that you can't make a career out of, let's say you really love to play video games or something. You play computer games, you play, those group games where you're all working together and you can't make a career out of it. What are the things that you love about that makes you feel so alive? Is it because you're working with people to accomplish a goal together? Is it because you're focused on just like one thing and you can really have tunnel vision and focus for hours on the same thing, and maybe that's a skill that you have? And then from there, think about what careers embody those things, and can you make a change in your career? Because at the end of the day, whether you're in debt, whether a lawyer makes a lot of money or not, if you're not happy, you've wasted your life at that point. And so what was really helpful for me coming out of this book was when I did write it with my dad, the pandemic had just started. I became a first-time mother. I had my son March 31st of 2020. So right when the world shut down. And as a teacher, I was in public school at that time. I was going to go back to work that next school year, but the pandemic, it was still raging. It was really scary to have a young child then. So I took an extra year and we did this project together. And as I'm writing this book with my father, just hearing all of these lessons again and realizing that I do have control to change things, it might seem like this is still very similar to what I was doing, but I quit my job as a public school teacher because I realized I was so unhappy. It was a toxic work environment. Although I love to teach, it wasn't the right garden for me to bloom in, so to say. And so I quit that job, and it was very scary because I had tenure, I had amazing benefits, I had a pension. Everyone thought I was literally insane, but I knew that I needed to be somewhere, even if I was taking a pay cut, that aligned with my values and respected its professionals. And so I ended up at a Quaker school. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't know what Quaker schools are, the Quaker values are really about, simplicity, finding the light within everyone and nurturing that and bringing that out. We actually have what's called, it's not religious, but they call it silent worship once a week, where everyone just sits in silence for 30 minutes and there's a prompt. And if you need to speak, if you want to speak, you can stand up. Otherwise you sit there. But the values were my values as well. And so I was able to get a job there, and my life has changed completely. So if you feel stuck, don't ignore that little voice deep down and change something, even if it means changing your lifestyle, because without your happiness, you have nothing.
Well, I agree. And you know what? The thing is that a lot of people don't understand the concept of happiness, especially that young. For them, they think that, well, if I see those people making so much money, maybe money will bring me happiness. But they realize that after a while, money brings comfort, but not necessarily happiness. And when they realize that they are getting paid for, let's say, being a lawyer or an architect or dentist, whatever it is, but if they don't like what they're doing, there's no there's no actual purpose in their life. And this is what we need to teach them as young as possible, to follow their dream, not to follow what other people tell them to do. And this is what they're so obsessed in trying to, because, okay, your mom and dad tells you need to be this, you need to be that. Your friend will never encourage you to be able to go on your own and start your business, because they don't want to be left behind, Courtney, and in their miserable job or their miserable life. So they want to make everyone feel miserable and hesitate them from moving forward. So again, it's a lot of, mind game, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the problem right now. Like you've talked about it before, the treadmill, the hamster wheel that we all get on and forget to get off. I think the goal is just to make money, like you said, and to be the most successful. But we define success, I think, as a society in a way that maybe is opposite to happiness for some, because success is about titles and money in our society rather than what makes you feel good? What do you wake up every day excited to do? And I think that's why we're a really unhappy country. We don't score very well on the OECD's every year that, they rate happiness in the happiest countries, and we don't do well in that rating.
Unfortunately, we don't. And because maybe, you know what, maybe it's also the educational system, Courtney. Maybe we're not training the kids properly. We're training them to go get a job, pay your bills, and pay your taxes, and retire when you're 65 to probably live until 76, which is the average lifespan. And then what? You work 65 years, or at least whatever amount of years, 40 years, to be able to only live 11 years of your life after you retire. How is that logical?
Yeah, it's a really hard cycle to break. It's one that I definitely was sucked into for a while. And thank goodness I had the parents that I had that said, no, follow your passion, and really supported me to go into teaching, even though I was scared about not making as much money as my friends, things like that. I am lucky that I had mentors to have me follow my passion and my happiness. But I think that it's so easy to just want to prove that you're the best based on what that, murky idea of what it looks like to be on the top. And, we really need to be focusing differently, especially for our youth as they come up. And I always ask my students, especially now at this prestigious boarding school, what do you want to be? What do you want to study? And they're all saying lawyers, engineers, doctors. And I'm like, okay, awesome. Like, where did your passion for that start? And they're like, well, my mom said it's a good, it's a good career.
My dad and my own.
Yeah. And have you done it? And, you need that exposure. And I think when you ask a young person, what do you love to do? That's actually a hard question for them to answer beyond maybe like a sports team that they're on. What really drives you? What is your foundation? Those are questions that aren't really thought about enough.
And you make a good point here, Courtney, is because a lot of the kid that I mentor and that I provide therapy for, those who actually are very anxious, is related because their family are expecting a lot from them. The level of expectation that they have for their kid, oh, well, how come you didn't have A+, or how come you didn't have this, you didn't have that, or you're going to select this career or that career. And that deep inside them, they know this is not for them, Courtney. They know this is not their calling, this is not their passion, but they have to follow through because, again, their parents decided what their kids should do. And that goes with a lot of different culture. When you look at the Asian culture, those who left their country, they came to the US, they had nothing in their pocket, they made it happen. So they want their kid, their legacy to continue on and to be able to do the things that the parents could have not done. So again, this whole pressure is what causes kids to be able to not be able to handle mental illness.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a great point that it's a systemic problem. When you said, the way we're educating our children needs to change. I think a lot of that is systemic, where we have a grading system that rates people.
Yes.
And when you think about it, a 0 to 100 scale, if you think of that on a bell curve, 50% of people are then supposed to fail. If 0 to 59 is an F, and you leave this little margin for success, and then you set 100 as the goal. In a way, this is not a system that is helping students be realistic and find themselves. It leads to extrinsic motivation, and there's a lot we can be doing differently, I think, as parents, as teachers, as role models, to help our young adults do it differently. And what's hard is there's all these expectations for students to succeed, yet the generation of parents right now, there's a term used for them, for us, which is called lawnmower parents. So the generation before were helicopter parents, kind of hovering over their kids, pulling the strings. Lawnmower parents, it refers to parents who basically want to smooth the path for their kids and take away all the obstacles. So it's like they're mowing the lawn so that the path is easy. And then we are producing children who don't have the skills like resilience or know how to handle failure. They become young adults and life is fraught with failure and don't have the tools to kind of overcome that. So in a way, we're mandating success, but then we're not giving our children the skills that they need to navigate the path to success, because failure is part of that.
Absolutely. And you know what? I agree with you 1,000%. And for that, but the thing is, we have to let the kids make their mistakes, because the thing is that if we try to protect them too much from making the mistakes, we're not giving them the tools to be able to succeed in life. And that's why now is the time that they have to take the risk. Now is the time to be able to make the the big mistakes so they could learn from them. Because once you have kids, once you have a mortgage, once you have all that, that's it. Those mistakes, you have to be like, they're going to be more reluctant and more hesitant, and they will be more adverse to risk.
Yeah. And it's hard as a parent. It's funny. My dad wants the sequel of this book to be a parenting book. He's wrote a lot of parenting chapters, but I understand why helicopter and lawnmower parenting exists. It's the same thing as the hamster wheel. You want your kids to be perfect because that shows that you're perfect, and you want to give them the world. And I literally have to look at my 2-year-old and like say to myself, like my mantra is like, let him fall, let him fall, let him fall, because absolutely. You know, that's what they need to do.
They need to fall. Yes. So what will be your concluding advice to the listeners about how to move forward after they graduate, what they should focus the most on?
I would say that you can't have professional success without personal success. So do not neglect your mental health and your physical health and your passions for a career. See if you can meld them or have a balance so that you can be your best self for other people.
Beautiful. Well, on that note, Courtney, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule as an author to join us. And thank you again for participating and inspiring our many listeners with your incredible story. Now, we hope that you all enjoyed today's episode. And I'm also very excited about the many upcoming guests that we have scheduled for season 11 of the Happiness Journey podcast, filled with inspirational stories, just like the one that you listened to today. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Learn to take your risk now. As you grow older, you become more fearful and less flexible. Try to keep your mind open to possibilities and your mouth shut on matters that you don't know about. Limit your always and your nevers. Continue to share your heart with people, even if it's been broken. The acronym FAIL, F-A-I-L, denotes first attempt in learning. And that in itself, if you have to go anywhere else, just make sure that you make interesting mistake, make amazing mistake, make glorious and fantastic mistake from point on. Now, break rules, leave the world more interesting from you being here. One thing to really learn after graduation is to be thankful for what you have learned, and what you have always end up having to learn more. Now, remember, more you learn and more you realize that you don't know much. Now, if you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never have enough. Larry Page, the co-founder of Google, once stated, "It is often easier to make progress on mega ambitious dreams." I know that sounds completely nuts, but since no one else is crazy enough to do it, you have little competition. And with no competition, the world is yours. My name is Dr. DanamZallag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.